Tonight, once again, it always comes back to the Epstein files. At the end of last week, Donald Trump does a midnight social media post that the Senate's only black Republican called, quote, the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House. And tonight, even after that, it comes back to the Epstein files. On Friday, it seemed like Donald Trump's racist video of President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, a fake video, stopped the world, stopped the media world anyway, and it did stop the world for a day or two of consideration of Donald Trump's vicious racism. In the New York Times, Jamelle Bouie, who will join us this evening, got it right in the headline of his article saying, this is just who Trump is. If you've been watching Donald Trump's stupidity and racism, which are actually opposite sides of the same coin, for the decades that it has been on public display, then there was nothing surprising in Donald Trump's latest racist attack against the two highest achieving black Americans in our history, whose very existence fills Donald Trump with poisonous jealousy. Donald Trump was in college when this was happening. This was the stuff of the TV nightly news in the 1960s. And when America saw these images, America chose sides. And not everyone chose the same side. I was in elementary school when I saw those images, and I chose sides. My parents chose sides. It was easy for us. We chose the side President Kennedy chose before he was assassinated. We chose the side of the people being attacked, but millions of other people chose the side of the attackers, and millions of those people who chose the side of the attackers stayed on the side of the attackers for the rest of their lives, and many of those people are still with us. Bull Connor, the racist Southern sheriff who was the worst of the worst, was called a racist pig in those days, not just by the Black Panthers. And on Bull Connor's side, a label like racist pig was worn as a badge of honor. On Friday morning, when I saw the false image of the Obamas that Donald Trump posted, the horror just silenced me, like I know it did many others. I had nothing to say. Nothing came to mind. No sentences came to mind. Nothing substantive. I had no substantive response to it, even silently in my head. Just those two words. Those two words that I heard so many times in my youth, just those two words. I heard so many times about Bull Connor, the two words I heard about George Wallace. Racist pig. Those two words say it all for people of a certain age. Robert Reich is one of those people. He is Donald Trump's age. He remembers the people called racist pigs in the 1960s. He served as Bill Clinton's labor secretary, and he chose sides in the 1960s and joined the civil rights movement. While Donald Trump was learning from his father how to operate a racist real estate business and where they did everything they could to block black people from renting apartments in Trump buildings. Robert Reich's thoughtful piece about Donald Trump's racist attack on the Obamas is titled, "Is It Unkind to Describe Our President as a Racist Pig?" Racist pig. Those were the only words that I could even form for hours and hours and hours after seeing what Donald Trump posted on social media. Never forget that there are 273 elected Republican officials in Washington, 273. And less than half a dozen of them had the slightest problem with the Trump racist video about the Obamas before Donald Trump was forced to retreat and took down the video without ever apologizing, of course. That silence from all of those Republicans tells you who they are, tells you which side they're on, tells you which side they have chosen. The most prominent Republican objector was Senator Tim Scott, who said Donald Trump should remove the video, which Donald Trump did a few hours later, and of course never said he did anything wrong and never apologized. Senator Scott said, quote, "It's the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House," which provoked me to ask Senator Scott on social media to tell us about the other racist things he has seen out of this White House. What's the second most racist thing he's seen out of this White House? Senator Scott did not reply. And as big as that story was, as overwhelming as that story was, as horrible as that story was, as explosive and ugly and purely Trumpian as that story was on Friday and into Saturday, once again tonight, it always comes back to the Epstein files. We learned today from reporting by Julie K. Brown in the Miami Herald that in 2006, Donald Trump told the Palm Beach police chief that Donald Trump said this to the Palm Beach police chief about Jeffrey Epstein, quote, "Everyone has known he's been doing this." That quote appears in the Epstein files in an FBI report found by Julie K. Brown that details an interview the FBI conducted with Palm Beach police chief Michael Ryder. Julie K. Brown is the reporter who, in effect, reopened the Jeffrey Epstein case for the national news media. She reports, quote, "In July 2006, just as Jeffrey Epstein's criminal case became public, Trump called then Palm Beach police chief Michael Ryder to tell him that Epstein's activities with teenage girls were well known in both New York and Palm Beach." The FBI report says, quote, "Trump said Maxwell was Epstein's operative. She is evil, and to focus on her." And now Donald Trump says he knew nothing about what Jeffrey Epstein was up to, and now Donald Trump says he's thinking about pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. Donald Trump's Justice Department has already moved her to the easiest federal corrections facility that exists, presumably, obviously, as a reward for saying she never saw Donald Trump commit a crime, when she was perfectly happy to answer meaningless questions asked of her in an interview by Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer, who is now Donald Trump's Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. She was willing to answer Donald Trump's lawyer's questions, but she would not answer a single question put to her by the House Oversight Committee today. When asked today if she was involved in the recruitment and grooming or trafficking of young girls, Ghislaine Maxwell could have said no. It's a simple question. She could have said no. But instead, she refused to answer the question because it could incriminate her in crimes. That is what the Fifth Amendment means. It means you are refusing to answer a question because if you do, your answer could be used against you in a criminal prosecution. And Ghislaine Maxwell, the sex trafficker, who we learned today Donald Trump once called evil, knows that she cannot answer any more questions about the crimes that she committed and still get a pardon from Donald Trump. Ghislaine Maxwell was asked if she ever coerced a girl to provide sexual favors to Jeffrey Epstein, and she did not say no. She could have said no. She could have said, "No, I never coerced a child to do anything with Jeffrey Epstein." Why wasn't that an easy no for Ghislaine Maxwell? When she was asked if she had ever coerced a child to have sex with her dear friend Jeffrey Epstein, she said that if she answers that question, it could incriminate her in crimes that she has not already been prosecuted for. That is what the Fifth Amendment means. You're not allowed to just take the Fifth Amendment because you don't want to answer a question. The only grounds in which you are allowed to take the Fifth Amendment is that you have reason to believe that if you answer the question, you will be giving evidence against yourself that can be used to prosecute you for crimes that you have not already been prosecuted for. And so Ghislaine Maxwell said today that any answer she might give about anything involving the words Jeffrey Epstein could lead to her being prosecuted for crimes that would be crimes in addition to what she's already been prosecuted for, because you cannot incriminate yourself in a criminal case where you've already been found guilty. There's nothing quite like seeing and hearing Ghislaine Maxwell when finally confronted with real questions. She never took the witness stand in her criminal trial to defend against a single word that the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein said in testimony against her at that trial. The survivors' testimony was believed by the jury, and Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of sex trafficking. And Ghislaine Maxwell and her lawyers decided that there was absolutely no way she could help her criminal defense in that trial by testifying. And what you are about to see is a demonstration of just how guilty sounding a witness Ghislaine Maxwell would have been in her criminal trial, where she was found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Here is convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell this morning being asked the real questions that Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer, now his Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who is a personal friend of Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal defense lawyer, refused to ask Ghislaine Maxwell when he had his chance to question her.
Ms. Maxwell, were you a close friend and confidant of Jeffrey Epstein?
I would like to answer your question, but on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer this question and any related questions. My habeas petition is pending in the Southern District of New York. I therefore invoke my right to silence under the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
Let the record reflect that Ms. Maxwell has invoked the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. Ms. Maxwell, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.